I was eating lunch with my favorite, beautiful middle daughter, Jodie, yesterday, and our conversation turned to one of her little exchange students that she got from the Middle East. And he stayed with her for a whole semester in school, and they took him everywhere they went, took him to school, picked him up, brought him home. Her husband is a doctor, so he's very busy. So when they're driving somewhere and it's time to pray, they got to stop on the side of the road and let him pray. And he does that 5 times a day, no matter where he's at. So I asked her, I said, well, did you ever talk to him about Jesus? She says, I really didn't have to. I said, what are you talking about? Well, we were sitting at the dining room table one day, and he asked me, he says, what is the most important thing in the world to you? And she said, well, let me ask you, what is the most important thing in the world to you? And he says, my religion. Well, a little bit of a shake up there, because he practiced his religion. He's the oldest in his family, oldest son, and he is very avid in his faith, very avid. It's exceedingly legalistic, because at a certain time every day you got to stop and pray, and you have a whole lot of rules that you got to keep. And if you break those rules and you miss a prayer time, you got to make it up somewhere else. Otherwise, you don't go to heaven and get your so many wives and you get all your rewards and things like that. So it's works-based. So he turned and said, okay, now I've told you what's important. What's important to you? And Jodie said, love. He said, love? She said, yeah. She said, it's the most important thing there is. Love never fails. And he said, well, I've never heard anything quite like that. You know, he'd cock his head and look, what kind of faith is this? So the time that he spent here, he said, well, what are the rules that I got to live by here? And she says, well, the rules are there are no rules. And he went, what? Everybody's got rules. She says, not in this house. And he just couldn't believe it. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. He's exceedingly disciplined, exceedingly smart, smarter than any kid his age that I know of in the United States. I mean, he's brilliant and very avid in his religion, very work-oriented, and he is definitely going to be a leader in his country, no doubt. So, he was getting ready to leave and go back to his home overseas, and he looked at Jodie and he says, I just want you to know something. And she said, what? He said, I've never felt such freedom that I have here, anywhere in the world. This has absolutely been the most important experience of my entire life. And like, that blows me out. What did Jodie show him? She showed him that he could live a life free of works. He could live a life with freedom. He could live a life without all of the regulations that he has to live by. And it changed him. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Love is the principal thing. The Bible says love never fails. The scriptures are very clear that if we love one another, this is the supreme commandment of God. There's 2 commandments, not 10. And all the 10 are encompassed in these 2 for a New Testament believer. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, and strength, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Who is your neighbor? Well, he could well likely be your neighbor, but anybody that's in your life, no matter who they are, what they come from, what kind of faith they believe in, the one thing everybody responds to is love. She made me come to tears talking about this because it was so precious. She just loved him, and he loved them back, and she let him do whatever he wanted to do. Now, he was grown up enough and disciplined enough. He didn't want to get in trouble, and everybody at school loved him, even when he wore some of his Muslim clothes. So I look back on that and I think, you know what? Some of you out there are telling people about your church, about your volleyball team, about the fellowships you have, about the new organ you bought. Tell them about all of the things that you do in your faith, and how to baptize, and how to serve God, and how to do all the sacraments. And you want to tell everybody all that. People don't care about that. The one thing they respond to is love. And if you'll love them, they're going to ask you, I want what you got. I want that freedom you got. How do I get that? And so before you get ready to tell them about your religion, before you get ready to tell them about your faith toward God, why don't you love them first? And if you'll love them, they'll want what you got. Trust me, I know it's true. Love never fails. God bless you guys, and go in peace. I love you. Bye.